My name is Dr. David Park, and I'll be your instructor this semester. This is my introductory video to explain to you a little bit about myself, who I am, why I'm here, and more importantly, why you are here. A little bit of background. I am half Korean, half Norwegian, so mixed race. I was raised in a very Mormon household. I am an Eagle Scout, and I was a former Scoutmaster. Born in California, but spent my formidable years in Hawaii and rural Canada, which is why I homeschooled until college. Now, when I got to college, I didn't have a GPA since I homeschooled, and so I actually started at NCTC. So, spent the first 2 years at NCTC and got a 4.0 GPA and was able to transfer to a school in New York. So be sure to get a good GPA, and you definitely can do it, and I'm here to help you do that. I got my bachelor's in psychology, I got a master's and PhD in history, and on my free time I am, I played bagpipes for 25 years with the North Texas Caledonian Pipes and Drums. You can see the website, and we have a few CDs. This is a plug. It is a nonprofit band, so all the money goes to the uniforms and also travel expenses and a bunch of other stuff. So I'm currently on a mandatory hiatus due to health reasons, but I will play again at some point. And most importantly, I absolutely love history. So, how did I get so into history? Well, two big reasons. First and foremost, I used to love comic books. Just Marvel, DC's terrible, but I read tons of comic books when I was younger, and it was when Spider-Man's parents came back for the third time I realized this is kind of ridiculous. It's like a soap opera but with superpowers. And then I found out that there are people that actually lived, real human beings, just like us, in the same world, that were able to accomplish things that were so amazing that it might as well have been superhuman. Some of the individuals, especially, in my opinion, the ones that made the United States, are just so remarkable. The British are coming, it says, patriotism points. Paul Revere is way overrated, but it's a good picture. Benjamin Franklin was with Wolverine's claws, stealing Zeus's thunder. Some of the things they did are just amazing. Andrew Jackson, like him or hate him, he lived with 2 bullets inside of him for a lot of his life. That is amazing. And my absolute favorite, Abraham Lincoln. The people in history, and some of which we will be talking about, did such amazing things that it makes comic books boring. So that was a big reason I got into history. But probably a bigger reason is I am a perennially curious neurodivergent amalgamator. An amalgamator is someone that likes to collect information, and the thing about history is it is the one field that you get to study everything. In fact, to be good at it, you have to study everything. To be a good historian, you have to know, of course, politics, economics, geopolitics, foreign policy, race, culture, religion, linguistics, communication, medicine, health, law, everything. And so history was a very natural fit because it allowed me to study absolutely everything. So that's why I love history so much. I do it for work, but I also read history on my free time for pleasure. So that's why I'm here. Now, a more important question is, why are you here? The answer that people always give is so we can learn from our mistakes. And I just want to be very, very clear. We never, ever do. And I can say that with certainty because I'm an economic historian. I do a lot of economics, especially economic collapses, which is why I'm so much fun to be around. And we never, ever learn from the past, ever. It's too inconvenient for most people. And so that is the reason everyone gives, and it's just a bad reason because it defies reality. So let me give you some better reasons why you're here. First and foremost, I do realize that a lot of you are here because history is a required course, or you're needed for an elective so you can graduate. And I just want to stress how good of a reason that is. There is a lot, we're going through a period where there's a lot of criticism of higher education and people saying it is not worthwhile. And it is very expensive. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But there has never been a bigger discrepancy between people with a college degree and without a college degree in all human history. And that just keeps on growing. I've had this for a while, 2021. Over the course of your life, if you have a college degree, you will earn more. And also, very importantly, when the economy goes down, people with college degrees have much lower rates of unemployment. And this only grows, keeps growing because we are now a knowledge-based economy. So no matter the criticisms of higher education and its cost, which those are very legitimate, over the course of your life, it is worthwhile to get a college degree. And the data on that is unequivocal. We tend to focus on those individuals that dropped out of college, and those are the outliers. So that's one good reason, is pure financial instability. Another reason to study history, it is part of the humanities, which means it is meant to make you a better person, a better human, a better citizen. It is impossible to have a representative government or some form of democratic government. In the United States, we have a republic or a representative democracy, but it is impossible to have a democratic government where the majority of the population are uneducated. It is vitally important to be educated in a democracy, and history in particular is very useful. I would argue it's more useful now than ever, for a couple of reasons. One, you learn logic. Logic is formal systemic study of inference, so putting together pieces of evidence to come to a conclusion. Historians, they do, I think on the LSAT, the test to go to law school, they consistently score like 6th or 7th highest. Number 1 and number 2 is always math and philosophy, because math and philosophy are both just using logic. But historians tend to do well. And it's because we have to line up our pieces of evidence to come to a conclusion, which we will be doing in this course. You will be doing in this course. So that's one reason, logic. It's a muscle that you need to strengthen. But a more important reason why I think history is more important now than ever is because it teaches you how to be a critical thinker. And this is so vitally important because right now we are living through a period where there is more information than anyone can possibly imagine. Information overload, it's called. Now, people thought that when the internet was created, it would start bridging gaps between different groups. And what it actually has done is divided us more than ever. Instead of bridging gaps, it has us more divided, because now whatever idea anyone has, they can go online and find a community that will promote that idea. That's one reason right now we have more conspiracy theories than at any point in human history, because whatever just crazy idea, like the earth is flat, which I'm going to take a very strong stance on that. It is not flat. You can just go online and find some people that agree with you. Before the internet, if you said the earth is flat, there would be people around you that say, don't say that, you sound absolutely insane. And so it stopped people from doing that, but now you just go online and you can find it. Most people think historians, our job is to know history. And obviously that is a part of it. But anyone can learn history. What historians, major part of being a historian is understanding sources. Understanding the credibility of sources and understanding the validity of sources. That's why it is so important now, because we have all this information and historians are trained to be good at looking at the information, looking at the source, and assessing its validity and its usefulness. So that is another reason that this class is so incredibly important, is it will teach you to be a better citizen. I would argue it'll teach you to be a better human. And it's vitally important right now. But let me give you the very best reason, not the best, I'll give you a third reason, and this one is really good. It is impossible to understand the present without understanding the past. And that is really important, because right now we're living through one of the most chaotic periods in human history. And that is not hyperbole. We live in a period where people tend to say everything's the worst, everything's the best, everything's the largest, it's the most horrible, worst president in history, the greatest president in history, greatest economy, worst economy. That's not what I'm going to do here. I'm going to tell you where we are right now, where we are in the present in 2024. And it truly is a crisis, and it is chaotic. We are living through what's called a polycrisis and a permacrisis. Permacrisis is when there is a permanent state of crisis, and that is what we are going through, is crisis after crisis after crisis after crisis, and they are crises. That is only going to continue, and I will explain why in just a minute. Polycrisis is when there are a bunch of little crises and they are all interacting and amplifying each other. So think of it like a bunch of flames, and they're all coming together and they're making a bigger flame. So that is what we are living through right now. And I will give you evidence to back up that statement. Now, this is an abbreviated version, just so you know. And I am only going through the ones that are, well, I had to leave out quite a lot, so this video wasn't too long. But I'm going to go through the ones that are going to affect all of us. And there are a lot of them, and we'll put them into historical context. 2024 is an insane year. It's going to be more insane as it goes on, too, and let me explain why. First, 2024, we're experiencing a double cicada event. Now, there are 2 broods of cicada coming out of the ground at once. That means there will be 1 trillion cicada. And if you take 1 trillion cicada and line them up end to end, that will be long enough to get to the moon and back 33 times. The last time we had a double cicada event was 1803, when Thomas Jefferson was president and the United States purchased Louisiana from France, doubling its size. Now, obviously, this isn't what you call a crisis, but if you believe in biblical omens, this does not bode well. A bigger issue, and one that is not specific to 2024, but it keeps getting more extreme, is we are living through just one of the most revolutionary periods in human history. And by revolutionary, I mean the sheer amount and pace of change. There is a lot of it stems from the rise of the internet. The internet has changed everything about everyone's lives. So there's a technological revolution taking place. There is an economic revolution, political revolution, foreign policy revolution, social revolution, cultural revolution, communication revolution, energy revolution. Oil and gas have been the most important natural resource for the more than 100 years, and now we're actually moving away from those. So there is so much taking place that the best term for the period we're living through, I think, is the exponential age, because the rate of change is actually happening faster than predicted. The number that I've read is up until 2000, I think it was 2003, the amount of information from the beginning of written language to 2003 is equal to the amount of information that's being produced every 2 days now. So it is having massive effects. And there's a book called The Exponential Age that goes into this more, but it is enormous. And this one is very different because unlike our previous economic and technological revolutions, in which we made tools that helped humans, the one we're living through right now, it's sometimes called the fourth industrial revolution, but that's a bad term, I think, because it is actually a digital revolution. We're moving away from industry, and what we are actually doing is creating tools that are replacing humans. And it is chaotic. This is so important to understand because it's overriding everything else. And there's two important things to note about it. One, there's something in economics called creative destruction. Whenever there's a new technology, it is good for society as a whole, but there are always people that are left behind by it. So, for example, a couple people created an app called Uber, and all of a sudden taxi drivers are going out of business. Someone created one app called Airbnb, and it challenged the hotel industry. And so when there's creative destruction, there are always people left behind, and they get angry. It's one of the reasons that there is such a big fight over maintaining fossil fuels, because obviously people have an economic interest. But a equally important aspect of all these revolutions, is humans hate uncertainty and change. Our brains just despise it, because if we're uncertain about something, then it considers it dangerous. Humans hate change. That's one of the reasons that you'll see people stay in terrible relationships, because they would rather have the certainty of the bad than the uncertainty of the unknown. So when there's this much uncertainty and change, humans react by trying to go backwards. And that is what we're seeing all over the world. So second major point is the revolutions taking place, which leads into the third major crisis we are experiencing, which is the geopolitical or foreign policy one. Right now, we are experiencing 18 years of the decline of democracy. Democracy is being replaced all over the world by dictatorships and nationalistic governments. The reason is because when there's this much change and this much uncertainty, what humans want is someone that will tell them there are simple answers to all this. If you just elect me, I'll solve all your problems. The formula for to be a dictator, it's very, very simple. Pay attention. You are perfect. There's nothing wrong with you. The problem is with all those other people. You know, the Jews, the Asians, the Mexicans, whoever. It's those other people. If you elect me, I'll solve all your problems. And I'll bring us back to when things were great. And so that is what we are experiencing. Decline of democracy all over the world. And this should scare the living hell out of everyone because nationalistic governments that are replacing them, I have been told I come across as very critical of nationalism, and it's because I am super critical of nationalism. The last time in human history we went through a period of nationalism, it ended with World War I and World War II because nationalism, by its very nature, will end in war. It is predicated on protectionism and also economic competition and mercantilism, it's called. But it will end in war. So it should scare everyone. 2024 is particularly interesting because we are seeing more humans vote in this 1 year than at any point in all of human history. And it's happening all over the globe, and so far we are seeing mixed results, but it is not looking too promising if you believe, like I do, that war is a bad thing. We are moving more and more towards nationalism, populism, and also dictatorships. So there are some exceptions, Modi in India, and some other ones, but it is looks like it's moving in that direction. So 2024, in terms of geopolitics, it is a chaotic year, which relates to the next point. We are also experiencing an environmental crisis. The environment is causing such chaos that it is leading people to be more desperate, and desperation always leads to radicalism. And I'm not going to get into the debate over global warming and whether that's real or not, but 2023, there was a $1 billion natural disaster every 13 days, and that is based on insurance payouts. So this is a purely economic indicator. This is, again, not a debate about whether whether climate change is real or not. The amount of natural disasters that are occurring are going up. It's happening more and more frequently. And by all indications, that is only going to continue. So that is one important factor of the environmental crisis. The other one is we're going to experience a freshwater crisis. Well, we already are experiencing a freshwater crisis. Mexico City is running out of water, but the amount of places in the world that are going to run out of fresh water is increasing, and it's happening much faster than anticipated. It's already happening in South Africa, Johannesburg. Last year, it almost happened on the Colorado River. Every freshwater source is slowly or quickly drying up. And it's going to hit Texas. It's going to hit the South. It's already hit the southwestern United States. There are already entire cities that are having to move due to lack of water. And that's only going to happen more and more. And what will someone do, especially someone with kids, if they don't have access to fresh water? Literally anything, since they need it to survive. So there's a freshwater crisis that should scare the living hell out of everyone. Related to the freshwater crisis, we also have an infrastructure crisis. The American Society of Civil Engineers ranked all U.S. infrastructure is a C minus. A lot of the infrastructure in the United States was built 50 to 100 years ago. And there are a lot of dams, there are a lot of levees, there are a lot of bridges, especially sewer pipes and water pipes that are dangerous. And the number of dams that are given a rating of D, and if they break, will kill people, is more than you want to think about. And this relates to the freshwater crisis because right now in the United States, there's a water main breaking roughly every 2 minutes. The United States is losing somewhere in the neighborhood of 6 billion gallons of fresh water a day, which is equivalent to about 9,000 swimming pools. So they need to be fixed, and they need to be fixed fast. So there's an infrastructure problem, which relates to the next problem, economics. And this one, really had to scale it back because there's so much to say about it, but it is scary. Our economic situation, economic outlook should scare the living hell out of everyone, and it is going to get worse. If everyone's worried about inflation now, it's going to get worse. And I can say that with certainty because there are currently 4 bubbles taking place at the same time. We have a stock market bubble, a tech bubble. The tech stocks are incredibly overvalued. There's a housing bubble that is comparable to the one in 2007, 2008, and something that's novel, a commercial real estate bubble that is a direct result of COVID. And that's just in the United States. That's not even including the bubble that's occurring in China with construction and real estate. The company Everglade, one of the biggest companies in the world, if it collapses, it will take down China's economy, and then the United States and China have so much trade that it will take down the United States economy. And these bubbles are going to pop. The rate of increase for all these things has been so fast that they can only pop. Unless, I have heard people say, well, you've been predicting a crash for 3 or 4 years now, and it hasn't happened. That is not evidence that it's not going to happen. In fact, that's evidence that it is going to be worse, because if you look at the graphs, the numbers keep going up and up and up and up. Unless you truly believe that 800 years of economic history is completely wrong, and this time is different. This time, these bubbles, no, they're going to keep growing forever. Every single time there's an economic collapse, people say this time is different, this time is not different. So they're going to pop. When is anyone's guess. That's the short term. The short term is not very pretty. The long term is even, I would argue it's even worse. In the long term, the United States has been going on the wrong path economically for quite a while. And that is based on income inequality. And this is a very important concept to understand. I don't say this as a hippie. I say this because consumer spending makes up roughly 68% of the U.S. economy. 68%, so about 70% of GDP is consumer spending. That's why the most important thing for our economy to do well is a strong middle class, and the middle class in the United States has been gutted. That's a graph from 1910 to 2010. Since 1980, income inequality has been going up. In economic history, it's called the Great Divergence. Since 1980, the gap has been getting bigger and bigger and bigger. The vast majority of wealth is going to 2 groups of people: the very rich and baby boomers. Very rich and baby boomers are getting the overwhelming majority of the wealth of the country. And that is why baby boomers are doing so much better. If you're wondering why it started in 1967. There are a lot of reasons, but one of them is because that's around when Medicare was passed. And healthcare costs are enormous. Now, if you're thinking that I'm saying the baby boomers are to blame for all this, I would never say that. But all of these authors do. And if this sounds overly critical, you should probably read the books because they go into the numbers and the numbers are very clear about it. The overwhelming majority of the U.S. economy is geared towards benefiting senior citizens. And I will point out that over the next 10 years, the majority of federal expenditures are going to be going to senior citizens. Healthcare is the single most expensive part of the federal budget, and obviously that senior citizens have Medicare, which is the best health insurance in the country. But Social Security, Medicare, and interest on the debt is going to account for 81% of all federal spending, or the growth of federal spending in the next decade. So people over the age of 65 are doing much better than the majority of the population. And that's because we've enacted policies that basically undid everything from the greatest economy the world's ever seen. It's called the golden age of capitalism. The United States from 1945 to about 1973 saw the greatest economy with the greatest middle class, and we've basically undone all of that. And when I say we, again, not saying baby boomers are responsible for everything, but I will point out they have controlled all levels of government and have enacted all the policies for at least the last 30 years. The majority of the population are struggling because of the increased cost of 4 areas. One, healthcare. It is, the United States is the only industrialized nation that will allow its citizens to go bankrupt just to save their life. And unsurprisingly, the number one cause of bankruptcy is healthcare costs. And 50% of people that go bankrupt actually have health insurance. Remarkably also, the United States ranks 69th in health outcomes. We are not a healthy people. So healthcare is enormous. Also, education, higher education. Higher education, the cost of it have gone up and up and up. And it's because the federal government has cut back on programs to provide grants and to make college affordable. So healthcare, higher education, homes are just going up like crazy, and child and elderly care. Those big 4 are why the majority of the population are struggling. And when I say the majority, it is the majority. The consequences of this also are upsetting in that if you lived in the 1940s, you had a 92% chance of doing better than your parents economically. And that is for the majority of the population, regardless of race. Today, that number is about 50%. Millennials and below, that's people born in 1980 and below, are the first generation in U.S. history that the majority of them will do worse economically than their parents. The United States currently ranks 27th in social mobility, social and economic mobility. They're related, which tells you this is not the problem of individuals. This is a societal structural problem, and it is a big problem that needs to be dealt with. A lot of Americans are struggling economically, which, of course, leads to desperation, instability, and radicalism. It is what led to the rise of Hitler and the Nazis, which leads to the next point, political polarization. When there's massive income inequality and there's massive change and massive uncertainty, humans become much more polarized. And this is not going to be telling you anything new. The United States is ridiculously polarized. As a nation, we haven't been this polarized since the 1850s, right before the Civil War. And that's based on voting patterns in Congress and also the fact that now there's two sources of information and we cannot agree on basic facts. And what's most scary about the partisanship that we're experiencing is it is based on tribalism, or in psychology what is called in-group, out-group bias, or us versus them bias. Tribalism is very scary because not only is it tribalism, it is what's called negative partisanship. That means we are unifying around shared victimization and hatred. So it's not that we are agreeing on positive ways to make the country better, it's that we are agreeing that we hate the other side. And negative partisanship and tribalism has dominated our politics. Throughout most of history, you could tell who was going to win a presidential election based on how the economy was doing. That is no longer true. Now it is based on tribalism. A lot of Americans would rather see the country fail than see the other party or a different tribe succeed. That is one of the reasons that so much of our energy is going to social and cultural issues. I won't say that social and cultural issues are not important, of course, but the amount of effort and energy and political capital that is going to the woke and anti-woke is disproportionate, especially based on all the other problems I just mentioned. So, just so you know also, there's a long history. When there's a massive income inequality, the really wealthy elites, they intentionally divide the majority of the population based on cultural and social issues, specifically race, ethnicity, religion, and today, gender. A lot of the factory owners in the Gilded Age did this. They would specifically hire on black and white workers because they knew they wouldn't unionize. So the level of attention being given to woke versus anti-woke culture, there's a lot of manipulation taking place. So there's a political crisis, and putting all of this together, there is a crisis coming, and what it will look like is anyone's guess. There is an author called Neil Howe. He wrote a book called The Fourth Turning back in the 90s, and it turns out the United States, it goes in phases. Every 80 to 100 years, there is a crisis. And he recently wrote an update to it. The fourth turning is here, and we are at that stage. Let me simplify it in a meme. Hard times create strong men create good times create weak men create hard times. So the first crisis we had was the American Revolution and the economic collapse after that, which led, obviously, there were hard times, led to strong men, the founding fathers, creating the Constitution. The next crisis we had was the American Civil War. Next crisis, Great Depression, World War II, and we are on the next period of a crisis. What COVID and the 2007-2008 financial collapse showed is we are so divided as a nation that it's anyone's guess whether we will, as a country, be able to deal with the next crisis well. There are a lot of key features in the period right before a crisis that should sound familiar. Pessimism about the country. 76% of Americans currently say the United States is heading in the wrong direction. A massive amount of conspiracy theories and anti-intellectualism. Those go together. And a lot of other ones. The most important one is destruction of institutions. And right now, we are seeing the destruction of three fundamental institutions in U.S. history: capitalism, representative democracy, and religious freedom. Those three things in the modern era of human history, 1500 to the present, are associated with long-term stability. In capitalism, representative democracy, they have their problems, but we've never found an economic and political system that are better than those. When it comes to religious freedom, sometimes get pushback that separation of church and state is wrong and religious freedom is bad, but there is no such thing as a theocracy that is open and free society. It cannot exist. So there is a crisis. It is no wonder that we are also experiencing a mental health crisis. This is the one that a lot of it concerns me. This one really concerns me. The amount of Americans that are reporting feeling severe depression and severe anxiety and are needing to be medically treated for it is only increasing. And this isn't happening all over the world. The United States is not unique, but it is one of the countries where it is the worst. And 2023, we had more people, more Americans die from the deaths of despair, they're called, alcohol, drugs, suicide, than at any point in U.S. history. We are experiencing a loneliness epidemic, and there's a good reason that we're so stressed. Because in the back of our minds, we all know everything I just mentioned. Majority of the population, 76%, understand things are not good. That's one of the reasons so many people are so stressed and so unhappy. There's a lot of reasons for it. It's not just one, but it's because we're living in such a chaotic period. So one thing about this is, if you are feeling depressed, if you're feeling anxious, I cannot stress enough, I empathize. I understand not exactly what you're going through, but if you are experiencing a crisis, I and NCTC take this very, very seriously. So never hesitate to reach out. I'm always here for you. Mental health crisis is not just young people being weak. It is affecting all age groups, and it is for very good reason. Nothing is more depressing than being in economically desperate situation. So there is a crisis, and it is happening all over society in all ways, shapes, and forms. How the hell did this happen? History does not have answers. History only has evidence and examples. What I can promise you, if you stay in this class, if you complete all the assignments, by the end of this class, there are 5 things I can guarantee you. 1, you will understand the past better. 2, you'll understand the present better. 3, you'll have a better understanding of the world. 4, you'll have a better understanding of the United States. And once you have a better understanding of those 4 things, I can 100% guarantee you will understand yourself better. If this was heavy, which I know it is, also if you stick around to the very end of the semester, I will tell you ways and reasons to be hopeful. I look forward to working with you this semester.